can't be home, this ain't bad.
Ready? All right. Chairman, I would move that we interview candidate number 5, 15, 27, and 29 on the date of December 1st, 2022 at 4 p.m.
Support.
The motion and support.
I'll support that.
Is there any discussion over that item? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you would.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Garber,
Yes.
Commissioner Plowman,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster,
Yes.
Commissioner Holzhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Broder,
Yes.
and Chairman Marks.
Yes. All right. And that passes.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of November 16th, 2022.
Support?
The motion and support for the minutes. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Before we move into public comments, Dr. Boggs, I have a question for you because this is a Wednesday meeting and not an official board action day. Was that an official board action? Or do we have to do this again tomorrow?
You will do it again tomorrow.
Okay, so in that effect,
It'll fall into your.
So at the end, when you approve the closed session minutes, or I'm sorry, when you approve the committee of the whole minutes tomorrow, we'll also add
okay.
the closed session minutes to that
Is
as well.
Frank still here then?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, he make calls tonight, no? he
Yes.
cannot.
Yes, it can. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I don't understand why it isn't, why it isn't an official vote tonight.
Well, because,
This
it's
is not a
official of the
committee
committee of
thing.
the whole. They're official. Approving them tomorrow will not hurt even if they're not.
So we're gonna have the same motion to interview those before?
No.
No, that's not.
You're talking about the minutes or you're talking about this?
His.
Oh, no, don't worry about that. I was talking about the minutes.
Okay, so that is official.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Because my only question.
I thought there was some confusion there.
Yeah, I am confused, so that's.
I am now confused also, but that's okay.
All right, just making sure. What I didn't want was to
Yeah.
make calls and then somehow tomorrow it didn't go through. I don't know how that wouldn't happen, but you never, there wasn't a quorum or something, you never know what can happen.
You're fine.
All right, got it. Then with that, we'll move into our first opportunity for the public to address this committee. Anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right into our committee motions and reports and start off with our Finance and Administration Committee report from Commissioner Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the Shiawassee County Board of Commissioners budget resolution for fiscal year 2023.
Support.
Item A has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion regarding this item?
So I do have a question about that. I know we have a draft budget, but we don't actually have a resolution, right?
Yeah. It's the same standard resolution you get every year.
Okay,
Just says that you approve the budget and what the final totals are.
okay.
And we don't have the final totals yet. So the first reading is completely and preliminarily a draft. And as I've said, we've been whittling away at it from 3.5 million down to 1.5 million now to around $300,000. And we will have all the final numbers for you. And I'm going to aim to send it out to you well in advance of the next meeting. So sometime probably the first week of December, you will see a version of it from BSNA, but your actual budget book will be for the meeting that whatever it is in December.
I did have one question on it. So I've been doing a lot of research on this budget, hundreds of pages. I did have 10 items with questions. Tracy answered 8 of those. Some of them were just things I didn't understand. I do now. One of the things that I think we talked about yesterday, and Dr. Boggs, you weren't here, so that's why I bring it up today. I feel like this board was under the impression that we are not using money from the delinquent tax fund. When I look at the numbers, it looks like we are going to use $600,000.
We usually use interest and fines. We don't use the principal of the amount.
Is that what that 600,000 is?
I think so. That's probably what it is. So we have set it up that we use, for balance stays the same, but all the interest and penalties that she gets are used in our budget to balance. So she keeps her approximately $12 million that's in the delinquent tax fund. That's the kind of, that is what you guys approved several years ago as the general resolution for balancing it. So that is what we have been doing for the last couple of years, is any new new penalties and fees and interest. Interest has been way down.
It's true though, isn't it, that before you were our county coordinator, we were using actual principal of that.
So before, everything was dumped in, and then you were pulling whatever the amount was,
Whatever we needed.
which could have been both the principal and the interest, fines, and penalties. It was just whatever that amount was at that time. Now we try to keep that money there because the delinquent tax fund and that money functions as a major part of our cash flow. So you have the accounts that we have all set up in the accounting system, but then you actually have the banking system, which is what Julie oversees, and that's the actual cash on hand and the flow of money. And so while some accounts may have money at them at one time and may not at the other, depending on when taxes come in or when grants come in or when receivables come in, that money serves largely as our cash on hand for daily operating expenses, and then it's owed to that fund at the end. And so that's what we generally use for that.
Right, and that's something that I think we have to really be aware of, that without that delinquent tax fund, we would have severe cash flow.
You would have severe cash flow issues without it. Different counties have done it differently. Some counties borrow from the state, not dissimilar to how school districts used to always start the year by borrowing from the state before the per pupil expenditures come in. We have not had that. We have been able to, because we have a good delinquent tax fund, use that money for cash flow purposes without taking from it. Other counties borrow from the state for the delinquent tax fund and stuff like that, and then you have to pay the interest and penalties to the state, which is one of our good assets that we
The
have.
Bank of Shiawassee County.
That's right.
But I think we do have to keep in mind though, and I'm not opposed to transferring those monies, but that delinquent tax fund is now not growing.
That's
So,
But I don't think it needs to grow any higher than what it is.
I don't either. But I'm just saying, I think we need to all be aware of that.
I think that is a good amount between what Julie uses and what we use for cash flow, and it's also a very good rainy day fund in the event of a catastrophic issue. I would not recommend borrowing from it or using it to fill gaps, but I also don't think we need to grow the principal any more than what it already is.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any
I have
other
one
questions?
question.
Yes.
Just, this reminded me of it. Have we paid our 5% of the bond yet? It was about, it was a couple $1 million.
We have not paid the 5%. That is up to the board if they wish to do it at some time. It is not required.
Well, it's not required. I thought it was really
No, under the
required.
law, no, under the law, you can borrow 95% of the amount.
Right.
You can choose to pay the 5% if you wish. At this point in time, I would not recommend it until the cash flow position is better.
I
When the cash flow-
misunderstood that requirement.
Yep, when the cash flow position is better, then yeah, I would recommend paying. But it's not required at this time.
So,
We got an extra $2 million.
well, so we still have to pay the payments on that 5%.
That's calculated and included in our payments that we have every month.
Okay.
So you have the amount that we borrowed, and then we make those payments, and then we have the 5% payments left. And so we keep working on those, but I would not, at this point, recommend taking from the delinquent cash to pay it off. Maybe if you have more economic development and growth at some point, and you have some extra money, then I would, but not at this point. I would hold for the moment.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, item A, Madam Clerk, if you would, please give us roll call on this item.
No, don't we just? move
It's
it?
moved to tomorrow.
It is already moved, we already voted.
No.
No, we just have to vote.
Oh, yeah, but just
Not
by
by roll
voice,
call.
we don't have to roll call. All right, all in favor of moving item A forward, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
I move to approve the agreement between Shiawassee County Land Bank and the Shiawassee County Board of Commissioners and authorize the chair to execute the same.
Support.
Item B's been moved and supported. Questions or discussion?
Just very briefly, this was a complicated process between three parties. So we have the SCDP, Shiawassee County, and the land bank. The one that you're approving here tonight is just between the land bank and Shiawassee County, and it's for the startup funds. Now, and it's not the totality of the startup funds that the land bank owes back to the county. My time, Morgan's time, other people's time has all been donated as part of that they don't have to pay back. But Eric's time, conferences, or things that they've gone to in support of developing their knowledge to serve on the land bank board, those all have to be paid back to Shiawassee County at the time at which they have funds to do so. And that's what this agreement puts in place. Attorney fees and a few conference fees.
Okay. Questions? Hearing none. Item B, all in favor? Moving it forward, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries on.
I move to approve the refilling of Deputy Register of Deeds 2.
Support?
Item C has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries on.
I move to authorize the purchase of 2 Dell PowerEdge R750s servers in an amount not to exceed $19,488.
Support.
Item D has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I would like to close my report.
Thank you.
And you've asked me to do your...
If you would, please, economic and physical development.
Item A, I move to approve the Public Act 116 farmland agreement application for land in Katie Marie Nethaway in Millbury Township for parcels 005-09-200-005-10-100-001 and 005-10-100-002.
Support.
Item A has been moved and supported. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move to authorize the contract with Grand Row for the historical courthouse remodel not to exceed $6,183,600.
Support.
Item A and B has been moved and supported. Discussion, yes.
Just in case you have any questions after you've looked at additional documentation, Greg and Ron are here to answer any of your questions. I think that we've come in under budget from where we had anticipated. There's a contingency fund built in, and if approved tonight, they'll be able to lock in the prices and order the materials, which they'll store until they begin April 1. And that'll give us time in December then to articulate completely the plan for closing the courthouse and where everyone will be placed, and for you to approve that in December.
Good. Any other questions or discussion? Gentlemen, this won't be official until tomorrow night at this time.
Just gonna ask that.
Yep. All right. All in favor of moving item B forward onto a final vote tomorrow signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will carry on to tomorrow.
I move to approve the direct spread of taxes in terms of millage rates to be spread on the taxable valuation.
Support.
Item C has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move into our Public Safety and Courts Committee meeting. Commissioner Webster.
Item A, I move to approve the purchase of a new patrol vehicle and equipment in a total amount not to exceed $52,713.33.
Support.
Item A has been moved and supported. Take your pick. Howard or Plowman.
Howard Skolker.
They were at the same time. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Item B, I move to approve the contract with the Mental Health Corps for a grant in the amount of $88,159, the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $42,010, the Michigan Drug Court Grant Program in the amount of $49,990, and the Swift Insure Sanctions Probation Program Grant in the amount of $53,000, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Support.
Item B has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion?
I'd just like to note that one of the 2 grants, so last year there were 3 grants that you approved, this year there's 4 grants, and they had divided one of the two up to a two-part award now. It totals the same amount it was last year, and I think that overall they're slightly above. These are relatively important to the stability of the circuit court, not only because they provide services through the specialty courts, but they allow circuit court to have some of their employees on general fund for small things that will provide them the entirety of the court, and helps balance them out from the general fund. I would also note, because I did talk to the courts today to answer Commissioner Garber's question, anything that is involved with that program is completely and only covered by that program. No general fund money is spent on those programs.
Okay, any other discussion or questioning?
Well, Tracy gave me an in-depth overview of how those grants had changed, so it does make sense. So instead of, like you said, there will be 2 grants replacing 1 grant, and the 1 grant does not cover salaries. So it sounds like a lot of shifting and a lot of extra work on those grants.
That's the state.
That's any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving item B forward, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Item C, I move to approve the contract with Shiawassee RESD and the county for services to the sheriff department.
Support.
Item C has been moved and supported. Questions or discussion?
Portion of this is covered by 911. Is it provided, the sheriff, they are part of the sheriff's department, so it's broken out accordingly.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of item C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
This concludes my report, Mr.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move into our final report, our Health and Human Services Committee. Commissioner Garber.
All right, we have one item. I would move that we approve participation in the Tri-Share Child Care Program not to exceed $12,000 for fiscal year 2023.
Support.
Item A has been moved and supported. Are there any questions or discussion? I have one question. Is it like a stipend that's given, or is there like one center where children will go? Does anyone know that?
Yes, we had a whole presentation.
Yeah, but I don't.
No,
remember.
you get your own child care, and then
And you can send your child wherever?
Yes.
And the-
Well, they have to be
Has to be
licensed.
licensed, yeah.
but-
Oh, understood. I got it. Okay. That was my only question.
Or we could set up a child care
No, I
thing
didn't
here.
expect that, but I didn't know if we were like
The
creating or
the
something.
expense is 3 ways too. Does he know that?
Yeah,
The freedom.
the state and the cooks have generously helped fund it. I know it was a very interesting process too, as Morgan went through the survey to the county employees. And I know that Pleasant View did the same thing, and I would have thought there was a lot more interest. And there really isn't, but I can tell you that I have had one employee contact me, and she is very excited and very grateful to have this assistance.
Perhaps if prices continue to rise, this becomes something more.
You have old employees too. You guys are gonna get hit with a retirement wave
Well,
in 4 to 10 years.
Yes,
Probably.
very much so.
I'm just saying.
well, I assured Tracy that that we wouldn't
I
exceed
wish it was
this.
there for when I had my kids.
Exactly, but yeah, we really don't, because in my mind I was going through, could this potentially apply? And I can't think of very many employees that have young children, so.
Well, there has to be certain incomes too.
Yes, so that certainly limits it, but.
Any other discussion or questions over this item? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of moving it on to tomorrow signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? This motion will move on to tomorrow's agenda. And thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
At this time, we'll turn the floor over to our chairperson, Commissioner Broder.
All right, let's keep it real brief. Couple minor things. I think I mentioned to y'all before the land bank is going well. I think very soon we're gonna have a couple of different funding sources, and the county will be paid back. That's way faster than I ever expected when we started this, so I'm real pleased how that's going. This new thing, you probably heard about the grant from flight remediation from the state. We're gonna get at least 200,000 on that. We have a whole lot of people from around the county, more than $2 million worth of applications. Fortunately, we can submit them all and let the state decide. They have a scoring system and so on. So we'll get the 200,000, but we don't have the hot potato of having to tell one person yes and a whole lot of other people no. So that's a really good thing. And for administration, we'll get to keep the land bank. That is, we'll get to keep a small portion of that. So again, that'll help fund the land bank. Things are going very well. And I hope by the end of the year, we should be able to tell everybody what the plan is fairly specifically for what's going to happen with the courthouse. We have another meeting hopefully soon about the courts, but we definitely are getting there. So I think we're going to do that with a limiting chaos. I mean, you can't eliminate it all, but we're moving ahead nicely on that. So I hope by this time next year, we're all going to say, hey, that went really well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Dr. Box?
So just briefly, you know, you've heard from me a couple times this week that we're working on the budget. That has been one of our main elements. And then as soon as we get done with the budget, we'll begin immediately working on stuff for closing of the year and then preparing for the audit that will come in, you know, beginning 30 days, 60 days after the close of the next year. So that'll be part of the preparation process. Assuming that the Board of Commissioners approves the Brain Road contract, tomorrow at your final meeting in December, I will present to you a plan for your consideration of how we will close the courthouse and where people will be located. We're waiting on a few contract details from some entities and individuals before I put it together, but then we'll reduce it to writing so that you may look at it and give your stamp of approval. Over this today, next week, and we have a couple of union negotiations that we're working with. So probably in December, you will have some contracts to potentially approve. One might be with AFSMI, and then the district court, which has traditionally been non-rep, has formed a union with the same group as circuit court and probate court, and we will meet with them for the first time next week, Wednesday.
All right, with that, thank you. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to address this committee? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.
That was a direct result of the half day on